They made me sit at the end of the table, with a label that said, Family Maid. But when my son walked in with a lawyer, holding a sealed envelope, the smirks disappeared instantly. Marilyn Davis never expected to marry into wealth. She came from modest beginnings, raised by a single mother in a small Vermont town, where pride didn't come from money, but from integrity, hard work, and quiet perseverance. She was the kind of woman who didn't need much to be happy, just a good book, a steaming cup of tea, and the knowledge that she was building a life she could be proud of. She met William Fletcher Jr. during her sophomore year of college. He was quiet, thoughtful, a little awkward, but kind. Nothing like the other arrogant, trust-fund boys on campus. William was an heir to the Fletcher family fortune, an old-money Boston dynasty known for real estate, politics, and their country club exclusivity. Marilyn had no interest in his last name. What drew her in was his sincerity. When they got married after graduation, she assumed the family would come around. They didn't. From the very beginning, Eleanor Fletcher, William's mother and the iron matriarch of the family, looked down on Marilyn like she was a stray dog that wandered into the wrong house. She hated her accent, her clothes, her background. And she hated that William chose someone beneath the family's status. She never said it outright, but her passive-aggressive comments made it crystal clear. Must be nice not to worry about inheritance, when you've never had anything to inherit, Eleanor once said, sipping champagne at their engagement party. Marilyn ignored the jabs. For the sake of peace. For the sake of William. For the sake of the future she dreamed they'd build together. That future didn't last. William died in a car accident 10 years into their marriage. It was sudden, brutal, and life-shattering. Marilyn was left alone with their 12-year-old son, Aaron, and a home filled with memories that barely paid the bills. She expected support, comfort, maybe even kindness from the family she had tried so hard to impress. Instead, they cut her out completely. Eleanor treated her like a widow by accident, not by blood. William's sisters, Priscilla and June, referred to her as that woman, as if grief wasn't real unless you had the right last name. The Fletcher estate, with all its lawyers and loopholes, managed to keep Marilyn away from anything William left behind, except a few clothes and old photographs. But Marilyn didn't fight. She didn't want their money. She just wanted to raise Aaron right. And that's what she did. She moved back to a small apartment, picked up work as a part-time school librarian, and taught her son the values she was raised with: honesty, empathy, and strength without noise. Aaron thrived. He was bright, mature beyond his years, and fiercely loyal to the woman who gave up everything for him. He went on to law school, and while Marilyn still struggled to make ends meet, she never let it show. Every Thanksgiving, the Fletchers invited Marilyn to the family dinner. Not out of love, out of tradition, out of obligation. And every year, Marilyn showed up for one reason: Aaron. She didn't want him to grow up angry or bitter. She wanted him to believe in second chances, even if her in-laws never gave her one. But this year was different. Aaron said he couldn't make it. Work emergency, he had told her over the phone. So Marilyn went alone. She baked her homemade pumpkin pie. She wore her favorite sweater. She fixed her hair the best she could. But as she walked into the grand dining room, something caught her eye: a folding chair, slightly apart from the rest of the table, with a handwritten label taped to it. Family Maid. And suddenly, everything she had swallowed over the years came flooding back. Marilyn stood frozen in the doorway. The elegant chandelier glowed softly overhead, casting a warm golden light over the Thanksgiving table. Crystal glasses sparkled. The silverware was arranged with obsessive precision. Dozens of plates lined the table, filled with food she hadn't touched. But her eyes were locked on the folding chair at the far end, just barely included in the perfect arrangement. Taped to its back, in bold black marker, was a piece of paper that read, Family Maid. It wasn't a joke. At least, not the kind that anyone laughed with. It was meant to humiliate. Priscilla snorted, sipping from her wine glass. Oh, come on, Marilyn. Don't look so dramatic. You've always been more help than guest. June chimed in, grinning. It's just a joke. Lighten up, it's Thanksgiving. Marilyn clenched the pie dish in her hands. Her fingers gripped the edges so tightly she nearly crushed it. She glanced around the room. No one spoke up for her. Not even the staff. Just polite smirks and a few awkward chuckles. They'd all seen her endure years of this treatment. She was just the widow. The poor girl who married up and lost her ticket in a crash. Eleanor Fletcher sat at the head of the table, regal as ever in her designer suit, cutting her turkey slowly. She didn't look at Marilyn. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than any insult. Dinner is getting cold, Eleanor said calmly, without looking up. If you're staying, take your seat. The room moved around her, Priscilla gossiping with an aunt, June adjusting her napkin like it was a royal crown, but Marilyn didn't move. She felt like she was drowning in that room. Every year she came, hoping things might soften. That maybe, just maybe, her years of patience would be repaid with something as small as respect. And every year, they reminded her she was barely even family. She placed the pie dish carefully on the sideboard. Her face revealed nothing. No tears. No anger. Just stillness. The same kind she had learned working nights, raising Aaron, and surviving a world that didn't offer second chances to women like her. Then Eleanor glanced up. Oh, she said with mock surprise. I thought Aaron couldn't make it this year. You said he had work, didn't you? Marilyn swallowed. That's what he told me. Eleanor smirked. Must be hard for him, trying to break into our world. Law school isn't cheap when you don't have family support. That one landed. Marilyn straightened. He's doing just fine. Oh, I'm sure, June said. But still, he's not a Fletcher. Not really. Marilyn's gaze shifted down the table. It was clear to everyone, she didn't belong. Not by blood. Not by wealth. And certainly not in their eyes. She had been labeled for years, as a mistake, as a charity case, as an afterthought. But now they had put it in writing. She didn't defend herself. She didn't scream. Instead, she walked slowly to the back of the room, toward the folding chair. She looked down at the label. Then carefully peeled it off, folded it once, and placed it inside her purse. Eleanor watched her, curious. Something you want to say, dear? Marilyn met her eyes for the first time in years. No, she said softly. I'm just waiting. Waiting for what? Before Marilyn could answer, the front door opened with a sharp creak. And the room, full of laughter, clinking glasses, and smug faces, fell absolutely still. In the doorway stood Aaron, wearing a sharp navy suit. Straight-backed. Silent. And behind him, a man in a charcoal-gray blazer holding a leather briefcase. Marilyn exhaled slowly, her eyes softening. She wasn't alone anymore. The sound of the front door clicking shut behind Aaron echoed like thunder through the dining room. He walked with calm, measured steps, his shoes tapping against the marble floor. The buzz of conversation stopped. The laughter faded. Even the clinking silverware halted midair. All eyes were on him, and the man behind him, dressed in a sharp blazer, holding a briefcase and looking every bit the attorney he was. Aaron didn't glance at the table. He went straight to his mother. Sorry I'm late, he said softly, placing a hand on Marilyn's shoulder. Had to finish some paperwork. Eleanor Fletcher straightened in her chair. Aaron, what is this? You told your mother you had work. This isn't the time for surprises. Aaron turned his head slowly toward his grandmother, his voice steady. Actually, this is exactly the time. The man with the briefcase stepped forward. My name is David Whitman. I represent Aaron Davis and his late father, William Fletcher Jr., regarding estate matters and a trust revision made before Mr. Fletcher's passing. A murmur rippled through the room. Priscilla leaned toward June, whispering fast. Eleanor narrowed her eyes. This is absurd, she said flatly. Whatever will you think of next? Your father's estate was settled years ago. Aaron nodded. True. But what you didn't know, is that my father quietly amended a trust before he died. A trust meant to protect my mother, his wife, from the exact treatment she's received from this family for over a decade. David opened the briefcase and handed out copies of legal documents, sealed and notarized. Gasps followed as Tyler, the family's longtime accountant, confirmed the headers and dates. Marilyn stood still, lips parted slightly. She hadn't known about this, not the papers, not the lawyer, not the trust. She looked up at her son, confusion and emotion flickering across her face. Aaron continued. You all labeled her the family maid. You humiliated her every Thanksgiving for years. You spoke down to her, ignored her, and made her feel like an outsider in her own husband's house. He took a deep breath. But what none of you realized is that this house, this very estate, was transferred into a private marital trust shortly before my father's death. One that gave my mother controlling interest in the property and legal ownership of its contents. Dead silence. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as she reached for a glass of water. No. That can't be right. William would have told me. Aaron turned his gaze directly on her. He didn't tell any of you because he knew what would happen. He knew you'd find a way to twist it. So he put it in writing. And now, after years of silence and sacrifice, my mother has full authority over this property. David nodded, confirming with a single sentence. Effective immediately, the title reflects full transfer to Marilyn Davis Fletcher. Marilyn blinked in disbelief. Aaron, I never wanted to take anything from them. He looked her in the eyes. You didn't, Mom. You just took back what was always yours. The folded label in her purse felt heavier now, like a symbol of everything she'd endured and now finally overcome. Eleanor stood, fists clenched. You don't get to waltz in here and rewrite our history. Aaron stepped between her and Marilyn. No, he said, quiet but firm. You don't get to rewrite what you never respected. The room was stunned, silent, ashamed, exposed. And in the middle of it all stood the woman they called the maid, now revealed as the owner of the house, and the heart of everything they tried to erase. The room was frozen. No one touched their food. No one made another joke. No one looked at Marilyn, at least, not the same way they had minutes ago. The matriarch, the sisters, the smirking cousins, the carefully dressed in-laws, all of them sat in stunned silence at the Thanksgiving table they had once used as a weapon. The laughter that had filled the air earlier now hung like dust, awkward, out of place, and shameful. Marilyn stood at the head of the table, not by choice, but by truth. For years she had come to this house trying to belong. She had smiled when it hurt. She had bitten her tongue when she was insulted. She had swallowed shame to protect her son from bitterness. But now, she didn't have to do any of that. Because the truth had spoken, and finally, someone had listened. Her hands were still trembling. Not from fear, but from release. After all these years of carrying herself like a guest, she realized this was never their house to mock her in. It was hers. Not because of a document. Not because of a trust fund. But because she had earned it, through sacrifice, dignity, and unwavering love. Because she stayed when others would have walked away. Because she raised a son who saw her strength, even when the rest of the world refused to. Aaron turned to her. You okay, Mom? Marilyn nodded slowly, still overwhelmed. I never expected this. I didn't even know your father left anything. Aaron smiled faintly. He didn't tell you because he didn't want you to feel like you had to prove anything. He knew what they were like. He just didn't know how to protect you until it was too late. She exhaled deeply. Her son's words felt like the warmest coat after years in the cold. Behind them, Eleanor tried to stand, but her pride seemed too heavy to carry. Her voice cracked slightly, the edges of her control fraying. I didn't know he did that. I didn't know he changed the trust. Marilyn turned calm but firm. You didn't ask. You never once treated me like someone worth hearing. You decided who I was before I ever had a chance to speak. Eleanor looked down. Priscilla and June stared into their plates, speechless. The smug superiority that once lit their faces was gone, replaced by something unfamiliar: shame. "I don't want revenge," Marilyn said, her voice steady but full. "I just wanted one thing all these years. Respect. Not pity. Not handouts. Just the basic decency of being treated like I mattered." Aaron stepped beside her, proud. "And now you've got that. In full." She glanced at the chair at the end of the table, the one they had labeled "Family Maid." The paper was gone, but the message had been loud and clear. Until now. "Let's go," Marilyn said softly to Aaron. "I think I've had enough Thanksgiving for one lifetime." As they turned to leave, she didn't yell. She didn't slam the door. She simply walked away, with dignity. With grace. With every ounce of power she'd been denied for years finally radiating from her step. And as the doors closed behind her, the house that once felt like a cage suddenly looked very small in the rearview mirror of her life. Fire, what would you have done if someone labeled your seat "Family Maid"? Would you have sat down, or stood up for yourself? Speechaloon, comment your reaction below. Tell us in one sentence. Or just drop a fire if Marilyn inspired you.